Talking. Just want me to start talking for you to check stuff? Okay. Is this distance okay? Do you
Hey,
need me closer?
Brennan, what's going
Perfect.
on? Maya,
Perfection's what I'm all about.
Welcome back to the ABP Podcast on the Enneagram personality types, where we ask big questions about small numbers. After playing rock, paper, scissors, it was decided that I would host this episode. So joining me today is a special guest. Say hello.
Hello there.
What's your name?
I'm Nathaniel Kriebel.
Awesome to have you. We're so happy to have you. So to start off, would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself? So what your role is at Greenville University, something about your home life outside of work, and then what Enneagram personality type you are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was a student at Greenville College back in the day.
Wow.
I graduated in 2016, and I started working here in 2019 with the Pursuit team. So I was a worship arts major when I was a student here, heavily involved in the music department. And when my predecessor left Greenville, Paul Sunderland invited me to consider taking up the role of Pursuit touring manager. And so I do that, and I basically what that job is I schedule off-campus trips for all of our Pursuit teams. But I've also taken on more since then, and I run rehearsals and stuff, and I work with our student leaders and try to mentor them a little bit. So it's a good time. And so outside of my role at Greenville, I work full-time at Smith Grove Baptist Church as their worship director, and also over Sunday school and small groups and stuff. So I'm heavily involved in those ministry areas. But you said like my home life. And the two things that are coming to mind, and this is probably not everything about me, is I really like Star Wars and Star Trek. It's not either or, it's both and.
It's both. Dang.
Yeah.
Nice. So what are some hobbies that you have outside of school?
Mm-hmm. I like to be outside when it's not cold. So like yesterday, it was 73. Today it's not. It's cold. So that's why we're inside recording a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I play a lot of music, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I like to read and write. Writing's a newer one for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting into songwriting a little more in the last couple of years, but I do like to read a lot as well.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so before we really get started, I want to give the listeners an idea of what a type 1 is, what that means. So according to research, the type 1 is called the reformer. They are motivated by the need to live rightly, and they're okay, hold on. Cut this one out, Brennan. Okay. They are driven by the longing for a true, just, and moral world. They're dedicated, loyal, conscientious, balanced, and good-humored. They're also efficient, organized, and trustworthy in completing tasks. So, Nathaniel, would you say this describes you?
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay.
I think most of it, I feel like I resonate. I don't know if it's I resonate with it or it resonates with me. I always forget which is the correct way to say that. But yes,
definitely
mostly.
Both. Okay. Was there any word that stuck out that was like,
good-humored? Oh, that's true. Oh, that's false, you mean? I'm not always the most organized.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. And I can be organized enough, but I've noticed after I graduated from college, I feel like I'm more disorganized than I used to be.
Huh. Like timeliness, getting things done on time, or making a checklist?
Sometimes it's more my workspace.
Like your desk?
Yeah. I feel like my desk is a good reflection of where my mind is at in any given day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. My desk is always clean. Always.
See,
but
I
I'm
used to be
9.
that way, and I'm not anymore.
So maybe college, you were allowed yourself to relax a little bit more.
Maybe you're right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So our goal for this podcast is to look at how people of different Enneagram types live life on Greenville University's campus and how they adapt to situations and engaging with others. And we're going to look at that through their Enneagram to understand more about them. So considering the fact that you are here because you're a type 1, do you believe that everybody could be sorted into an Enneagram type?
I'm not sure. You know, that all the people who know about the Enneagram say yes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also heard a lot of people say, I don't feel like I fit into one of those. And I don't know enough about it to be able to say definitively. But I do think, for me, it's been helpful just to be able to name certain things about myself or to help draw things out that maybe I wouldn't have said it that way, but hearing it described as part of this type. Okay, I can see that, and it helps me think through my own life a little more fully.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, I know for me at least, understanding what somebody tested as, it helps me to understand them and how to interact with them, and how to take care of them. But do you think if you know somebody, could you say, "Oh, they're a type blank," or do you think maybe that's not something that you could do?
A lot of the people I've heard who know a lot about the Enneagram say that you shouldn't type people. That really it's something only they can know for themselves because they know themselves best. So I certainly wouldn't feel confident typing most people. There's a few types where I feel like, yeah, that's kind of obvious. Like sevens, you can usually tell them.
Oh,
Seems
yeah.
like, or other ones maybe I could know, but yeah, generally I don't think I would try to type someone just by looking. And even I've heard too, tests aren't always the best indicator either.
That's true. That's true. Just depends on the person. Yeah. I would definitely say that sometimes when someone tells me, "Oh, I'm a type 6," then I can be like, "You're definitely a type 6." I can
that
see
is
that.
true, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's a surprise. Like, really?
Yeah.
That's how you see yourself. Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. and then you're like, "Well, I want to know more. Why are you like this?"
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is about energy. So would you consider yourself, or do you know if you're an introvert or an extrovert, or the in between is like an ambivert, so you can kind of get energy from anywhere, but with the purpose of where do you get energy from, if that makes sense? And then what does that look like on campus?
Yeah. When I was in college, I took the Myers-Briggs test.
Oh, yeah.
And I got INFP. And then I took it again a few years later, and 3 of the letters flipped, but the I was not one of them. And in fact, this time I took it, and it had like how far on each side you are for that letter, and I was like 100% introvert.
Wow. So the
Still.
I means introvert.
So the I is
Wow.
introvert, and I am very much an introvert. Yeah, I do like people, and that's something I've grown into, but I need my me time for sure. So you asked kind of how does that play out on campus? Well, so this is my part-time role, but I do spend a good deal of time here and energy with students. And sometimes it's fine, like I can just do that and go home and be done for the day. Other days, so like recently we had a all department meeting that was kind of a lot. And like I just went out for a long walk in the gullies by myself. I spent about an hour out there just to process and think and be by myself. And I felt great afterward. So stuff like that, I like to be out by myself in nature or just kind of sit at home and process. And it's usually for me, it's not, I mean, some people, they like to unwind by watching TV or something. Like, I'm not like that. I need to really think through things or process the events of the day or the conversations I had. That helps me to recharge.
So by the end of the day, you mentioned a few times, like by the end of the day is when you need to recharge?
I don't know, maybe. Yeah, it's not always like clockwork, I guess.
Yeah. So if you have like, you get pretty drained after a meeting and then you take like an hour or two, or can you come back and be like, I'm ready to go?
Yeah, and I should probably qualify, like, I don't feel like it's every little thing drains me. I can go for a while, but I don't know. I do sometimes need to take breaks from people.
Yeah. I totally understand. I totally understand. So like at the end of a long day, you're done with work, you're going home. Is there an activity that you would do?
Sleep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
No, not really. It depends on the day, and sometimes I'm getting home. I have a lot of couple nights a week. I have pursuit rehearsals pretty late, and so when those are done, I usually just go home and go to bed. Other days of the week, I might hang out with the family that I live with, watch Star Wars with one of them or something, or play games if people are up for it. But oftentimes, I get home and everyone else has gone to bed. So it's often just me, and that's okay.
Which you're not going to complain about necessarily.
I don't really mind.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is about core fears. And the core fear is kind of where you as an Enneagram type or the Enneagram type that you have is kind of the place that you don't want to be in, the feelings that you don't want to feel, or what you dread most, I guess. So for the Enneagram type 1, the core fear is to be considered a bad person, to be seen as imperfect, and they cope by being rigidly disciplined and hard on themselves and sometimes on others too. So does that sound accurate? Would you say that's maybe a fear of yours too?
Yeah, it definitely is. So people who know me well, people who know me really well have probably heard me talk about integrity before. And this is a big thing for me. And it's actually maybe amplified because I'm a Christian, where I think, well, everything we say and do matters. And it always bothers me if people say one thing or do another or behave differently in one situation than another. But I also know that that's sometimes true of me. And I don't want that to be true of me. I want to be a consistent person who's morally upright and who is blameless in a way. And I don't mean like perfect, but I don't want to I don't want to live the kind of life where someone can poke holes at it and it deflates and it's a bad witness for the Lord, or just bad representation of the places I work for or who I am as a person. So I do kind of have that fear of being found out, which is not fun. And so does it translate for me into rigidity, like they said? Yeah, sometimes. And actually, I've gotten into trouble a couple times with certain people because I assume people should act a certain way according to what they say they believe in. And not everyone sees it that way, I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me, like that just doesn't make sense to me. I still think they're wrong usually, but I have to not say that sometimes.
Yeah. Just give it to yourself.
Yeah. But as a core fear, like for me, it is that I don't want to be found out if I'm wrong. And sometimes I am, and that's just the truth. But it's a process of, being willing to accept when I get called out, and not get defensive. Because, none of us is perfect. Even though, reformers, what we said type 1 is called, but some places call it the perfectionist. And like that's kind of what this is for me, is I want to be that kind of person. Realistically, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you ever confronted somebody, or do you find it difficult? Or, I mean, you said in some situations you just keep it to yourself, but if you found somebody was not living up to what they should be or what like they've displayed in other places, do you find it difficult to confront them, or would you confront them about that?
I have, and I do, and it is difficult, and I don't always do it for that reason. But I always, I don't know, my first reaction sometimes is to want to confront and set things right, which I think, again, goes back to kind of how you described this type. I see something that's not right, and it's usually on a character level with other people, I'm saying. And I want to make the point that, hey, this isn't lining up. This integrity's not here, like I was saying. And so, yes, I have done that. It's never a comfortable thing. And it's interesting because I'm actually, I don't know when this is going to come out. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but like there's a little bit of that I need to do right now with some people. And I'm thinking through carefully, how do I do that in such a way that it's helpful and not just sounding like me complaining, And I was talking to a friend of mine last night that I don't even remember this. I kind of remember this, but I called him out on a few things because he worked for me on one of our pursuit teams. And he basically said, like, I never forgot that. You were right. And it made a big difference. Yeah. And I was like, okay, if that's the case, that's good. That's what I hope comes of it. But I know sometimes I make a mountain out of a molehill when I don't need to. Yeah.
Well, it's important to you, so it's probably hard not to. Okay, so the last question actually kind of follows along this path that we're talking about. It's about boundaries. So boundaries look a lot like with other people or with events or with your time. So do you find it difficult to set boundaries? And then if and when you do, what would that look like on campus as somebody in your position?
I do have a hard time with this, and this is something I don't think I realized till the last couple of years. So I have a lot going for me in the sense that I'm, not a student anymore, so I don't have all the homework and stuff. But I'm a single guy, so I have a lot of time. But I do work 2 jobs, so I don't have a lot of time. So it's like an illusion. And I say yes to things because I I have people in my life that I care for and I want to help them out. And sometimes I agree to too many things. And sometimes, honestly, like there's a dynamic at work that like they've given so much to me before, like I want to give back, or I want them to give something to me in the future. So I'll do this to build credit or something. It's almost transactional, which is a problem. But like, I don't know, like the big one right now for me is I'm involved in several senior recitals this semester where I'm just playing in their band, which I love to do. And I would love to do it for every one of them, but I've said yes to many of them, and it's actually a lot. And so several evenings are gone now for that. And it's just how it is. I mean, they do the same thing. I did the same thing when I was a student, but I'm doing a little too much of it. And so the boundaries thing, it is a real question for me. It's usually with time and just agreeing to do too many things that when I have to keep doing, my regular work, it gets to be a lot.
Yeah. So when you, like, if somebody right now were, like another senior were to ask you, hey, I would really appreciate it if you would play piano for me in my senior recital. At this point, would you say yes or no? And if you do say no, is that just a, no thanks? Or is that a, man, I would love to, and
That's
like,
that.
don't get me, okay. So can you ever just say no?
Yeah, I have and can say no.
Yeah. Without
Sometimes
justifying.
it is the short no.
Wow.
I can do that sometimes, but usually it's with people that I have a long-standing relationship with, so I don't want to be curt, of course. But if I can, and I think they all understand. Like every senior knows they're all busy. Like I'm sure you know a lot of them. They understand. So if it's a question of I can't take on one more thing, they would get it. But I would still feel bad because I don't want to let you down.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Yeah. When it comes to, like, especially if it's something that's close to them, like it's a project that they really need help with, and they're like, I don't know who else to come to ask for this. Would you ever redirect them and say, I can't help you, but you can ask this person? Or is it just kind of like a, no, I'm sorry, you're on your own?
I do that sometimes if I think there's someone who can pull it off. I don't like when other people do it to me and it's not helpful, So I don't want to be not helpful to somebody. Now, having said that, there have also been times, this hasn't happened recently, but there's been times before where like I don't want to do something for someone and they ask me, and so I like try to direct them to a permanent resource. So it's like, you won't ever need to come back to me because you'll love this person so much.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, well, Nathaniel, thank you so much for being here.
Sure, Bella.
We're happy to have you. Everybody, keep an eye out for another episode on the Enneagram type on the Papyrus for more interesting conversations and insight into people's lives. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.